day here in Lachute.
Okay. Yeah, it's nice and sunny here in Vankleek as well, but it's not very warm. So I think we're headed for that the coldest of all seasons.
Yeah.
So anyway, welcome to Hometown Conversations. We're glad to have you with us. You and I have had a brief chat previous to this, and so I'm really looking forward to our conversation. To all of you who have tuned in to be a part of this exercise today, we're going to be opening up for questions at the end of our discussion. So please take notes and hold on to your questions. And as soon as Robert and I have finished the conversation that we're planning to have, we'll open it up for you folks and let you fire away at Robert. So let's get right into it. Who is Robert Simard?
Well, a multiple talented guy, I figure. See, I'm an historian at first. I did my BA degree at Sherbrooke University back in from 1982 to 1986, and did my started an MA degree at that back in those days on New Orleans history. And today, well, I am too a musician because I've been part in my playing in a band ever since 1990 for about 31 years. The name of the band is a Henry Band, and we play francophone music. I've been playing all around the province of Quebec, even in Ontario. I played Bell Center, and I played in front of 10 to 100,000 people. So
We'll have to get you involved in our music series.
yeah, for sure. So as we're speaking now, I'm at my office at Carrefour Jeunesse Emploi d'Argenteuil. I'm in well, mostly somebody who accompany youngsters into their path, which could last, up to 3 to 4 years of accompanying. So that's it.
The guidance type of thing.
Yeah, guidance and talking and just me. I'm much the dreamer part of everything. You see, I start a little project, we start the project and we finish it. It could last an hour, it could last a day, it could last a year, but
Sure.
the thing is, it's always try something, start something, and by starting something, well, we're finishing it after. So it's kind of far from my history work, but it's something I really like, the contact with people. And it's not, archives tells you stories of people in the past, and these young people, they have sometimes a really, really hard path, which they've been through. And I really like that job.
So they're mostly troubled youth, or
Yeah, mostly troubled youth. Yeah,
or
yeah.
at risk of being in trouble.
Yeah, no, yeah, higher risk of most of them they quit school really early, and so sometimes we talk about going back to school, but it's not the main objective. The main objective is to feel good with ourselves.
Sure. Yeah. Let them make that the decisions or the call on that as a result of your intervention and feeling good.
It is not my speed. My speed is really hyperactive. I'm a hyperactive kind of guy, so this is why I'm doing lots of things. And working with these youth, I'm with their speed. See, if they want to go slowly, it's their own path, and we try to enlighten that path.
Sure.
With smiles and sunshine and sometimes rain, snow, whichever the season.
Yeah, I was from our previous conversations. I was trying to picture you sitting there quietly listening to these young people talk. Okay, it's probably a good counterpoint to what we do know about you.
Yeah, well, you see, when I was younger, I was a really shy person. Going through high school, I didn't talk with nobody. I was more like a following the wall type of guy, and not saying hello to nobody, not even my sister at school. So I remember it was one time one friend came to me and he said, "It's really interesting when you're talking." And it kind of got into my heart, in my head, and then I kind of decided, well, okay, might as well use my, my mouth and start talking, which, yeah, I became, well, today I wouldn't live without talking.
One of the questions I was going to ask you is when did you realize you had a talent for storytelling? So obviously somebody gave you a spark.
Yeah, yeah, and that was really way back in high school. And me, I'm that type of guy. You see, I got these hair because I remember last time I combed my hair. That was I was 16 years old or 15 years old. I just got out of the um, hairdresser faculty at high school, and they kind of mold my hair into something. And then after that, I was waiting for my mother outside the school, and then the wind got into my head, and it whirling and curling and everything, and I felt the wind on my crown, and I said, well, I don't want to feel that anymore. So I stopped at that time combing my hair. And I really had a large hair, like afro type of hair. And then without combing it, it became like that, like
Yeah.
dreadlocks. So yeah, it's natural dreadlocks. Nothing, I did nothing. It's only nature. See. And
I let nature take care of my common
yeah.
problems. So.
And you asked for storytelling. Um, I remember starting into music. I was telling stories before my every song that I wrote, and a friend of mine, Jean-Marc Massy, he was in charge of the Dimanche du Conte back in Montreal, early 90s. He came to me and said, "Yeah, I'm starting this big project of storytelling into a bar. Every Sunday, we're going to be there and we're going to tell stories. And I want you to be there at at the beginning of the project." I said, "Okay, well, I'm not sure. I'm not sure if I'm a storyteller because, I had been into storytelling shows, and I've heard Michel Faubert tell stories, and I thought, that's the type of storytelling I would like to do, but I didn't feel I had the competence or the talent to do that." But Jamak always told me, "No, no, you're really a good storyteller. You have your own way of stuff telling stories." And you know what? I remember that Sunday afternoon, and I was feeling so all disturbed inside, and I decided not to go tell story. I called Jean-Marc. I said, "You see, I'm not really ready for that." And it took like 20 years
Wow.
before I got into really storytelling after, from I think it was 1992, and I start telling stories with, using history background and everything around 2012. So
Wow. Oh, it took that long for it to evolve.
yeah, yeah, but well, I do not like I do not like change in my life.
Obviously.
Obviously not. I don't like moving.
Yeah.
It's probably because we moved too much in my youth, so it's probably because of that. So
You put the anchor down, and that's good enough for now.
yeah, 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 yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I remember the first time that you and I met. It was at, and I think we discussed this previously. It was at the United Church in Avoca, and you were
Hmm.
giving a talk on how the Avoca area was settled.
Yeah,
And you told the story of the very beginnings from Scotland to Glengarry and up and across the river. And I remember that, I forget, there was probably about 25, 30 people in the church, and everyone was spellbound as you went through the story basically you were giving us a history lesson, but
yeah.
you told us the story, and I think most of the people sitting there could see the people moving from one Glengarry up to what is now Hawkesbury, and then across the river, and then up into the hills, and people were spellbound through the whole afternoon through it. So well, it took you a long time from beginning idea to beginning your storytelling career.
Hmm.
It's certainly maybe it was just maturing with you.
Yeah, well, probably, yeah. And I wanted to have that twist, between storytelling and history, how to bring it up to people. And I thought a lot about how I was gonna do it, and it's always start with the beginning. As for the, that presentation, I remember when I started way back in the Ice Age, and it's probably the notion of what was the territory before, and it changed and it molded with the earth crust, and it molded, it changed into times, and uh, people way back in time, they had this notion of we always know where we are. Today, if we do not have a GPS on, it's like we're lost, where does the sun rays? Children would say, well, maybe there, but back in those days, they have to have
Sure.
this notion and this knowledge of the territory and of nature. And it's something that we kind of forget because now we have technology. And I feel it's important for me while telling the history, that history is a story to tell too. And
Mhm.
yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting that the notion of people not knowing where they are. I was in Hudson last night, and someone asked where something was, and I said, "Well, it's just east of this particular road." No clue.
No clue with
No
where the
clue.
east is,
No,
eh?
no clue
Yeah,
which way was east. So is that
yeah.
left or right? Well, it
Yeah,
depends where you're
and
standing.
yeah, sometimes people try to understand. Okay, why do people? Why do pioneer families settle on that part of the land? And well, I tell them, as I think of Lachute, we have Main Street, and we think that Main Street is the main part. This is where the people arrive and settle first. It was not on Main Street that they settled first. They settled on the other side of the river, just at the foot of the mountain, at the foot of the Canadian Shield, because they were protected from the northern wind,
Yeah,
and from the northeastern bad weather. And two, they had the sun as an enlightenment in front of their house for the whole day. So that was important. And there's a little strip of land between the rocks and the river, which was really good land to farm. So the first pioneer family who settled then, the Clarks, the Hutchins, and the Powers, they settled on the other side of the river. But the village didn't exist in those days. So, and they were fishing. And you know
sure.
what they were fishing in the river? They were fishing salmon. There were salmon in the North River. So that's quite incredible.
Yeah.
Sometimes I ask, I tell the kids, how we could bring the salmon back just by destroying the dams.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Yeah. There might be a discussion on that one.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. I'm
yeah.
not really politically correct sometimes.
Yeah, but truthful.
Yeah, truthful. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So, so where does this passion you have for history come from? Obviously,
It's
you
probably,
studied it,
yeah.
but
It's probably that I wanted to understand where did I come from? Okay. Uh, and I asked my mother she was the keeper of history in our family, and she was the keeper of the old genealogy of both my father's family and her family, and she talked a lot about our ancestors, and and she once told us that we had the natives blood in our ancestry, and finally I found out it was true. But my mother's a Tremblay from Saguenay, and my father's a Simard, Charlevoix, who moved to Saguenay, and both of them live in Arvida, a little town close to Jonquière. And they moved around. My father had to go away from Arvida because there was no job. He didn't want to make pots and pans at Alcan aluminum plant, so he went into Navy, and he got hired as a cook on ships during the crisis of the Cuban missile back in 62, 63. And they were living at Halifax, and then in Moncton. This is where I was born, and me and my older brother were born in Moncton, New Brunswick. So uh, early at an earlier age, going to school, and when they were asking me, where were you born, I would say Moncton, New Brunswick. But how come, a son of a Tremblay and a Simard born in New Brunswick? It doesn't happen, you see. So I had to explain that my father was in the Navy
yeah,
and he
yeah,
was a cook. Now, he was not a soldier, he was a And after that, he kept on cooking because he got hired by the CN and he was working on train. And we moved back in Saint Therese, and then after that we moved in Saint Janvier, and then up to Saint Jerome, and 1979 we moved in Saint Andrews in Argenteuil. So I'm kind of a newcomer, but I moved there. I was 15 years old. And as soon as I moved there, I went away to Egypt. So, but it brings me back to history because back in those days, my mom she got elected as a counselor at the St. Andrews town hall, and she talked to me about the Argenteuil Museum in Carillon. And while doing my study, back in those days, I wanted to be a lawyer and a hockey player. Both think that, well, I'm still playing hockey, but I never was a professional hockey player. And my career as a law student lasted only 1 hour.
Okay.
I sat in a classroom at the university at Sherbrooke University, where I got accepted in law, and I sat there, and it went so fast in my head. I went like, no, this is really not for me. This is really not for me. And uh, the luckiest of the how destiny is. I kind of finished my CJEP in 2 years and a half because I was playing handball, and handball was really popular back in those days, and we had a really great team. I wanted to play like 3 seasons. So I went to Sherbrooke University as a history student at first for only 1 semester. And, with the intention to change and go to law school, got accepted at law school, but then I went back. I went to the register office and I said, I'm not staying in the law school. I want to change and go back to history faculty. So this is how I did my back in history.
Uh-huh. Okay.
I really had, I really had the piqûre. Yeah. I fell in love with history in that, and it's probably one teacher who gave me that passion. He was really a great storyteller, and he was talking about Moyen Âge, the Middle Age, and which is, it's not my period, but in time, my favorite period in time. But he was so interesting because he was using all kinds of images that present images to telling us what was it like that people were living back in the Middle Age in France or in Great Britain or in Holland. And so it got really into me. I said, okay, if I'm ever an historian, I would like to be like him. Yeah.
Mhm.
And his name was Bernard Chaput. Yeah.
There's that's probably a fairly common story, right? Is that someone with a real passion for something? It's usually a teacher somewhere that sparks it, and at least
Yeah.
that's what my late wife told me because she was a teacher.
Okay, yeah.
So,
We call that in French allumeur de réverbère.
yeah.
Eh?
Okay. Yeah.
We could say in English,
I'm not sure that there's a direct
yeah,
uh,
I'm not sure neither.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, but
but
it
it's a
is
beautiful image to
yeah, it is,
describe.
it
Yeah,
is. It needs
yeah. And,
to
and
be.
this is what I'm trying to do with the youngsters at my work, being
Oh, that's good.
an
That's good.
enlightener. Yeah, yeah.
And with your work with the young people, is there a bit of your history work
every
built
time
into
every
that?
time
Yeah.
we have this new project, and we're buying a new van, and we're going to call it the Bob Mobile, and I'm going to be the driver, and we're going to drive around and talk. And every time I drive around with kids, I tell them the history of the place. So oh, look at that bridge here. That bridge was built back in those days,
Yeah.
and see here,
Yeah.
that river, that was not well, you see, I always tell them everything.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. Right. Take the opportunities as they present themselves.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So we talked a little bit about your schooling and some of the things that you're doing now. But from your university days, what kind of work were you doing that led you to what you're doing today?
Um, I
Unless you're a
remember,
spy, you
yeah,
don't have to
yeah,
tell us
yeah.
if you're a spy.
when I started my first MA, the master degree, I was focusing more on New Orleans history, and back in those days, I wanted to go to San Diego University because they were giving their special course on public history, and this is what got into me to be a public historian,
Hmm.
the use of the historian at the service of everything in the public, so for community service, for whatsoever, patrimonial, conflicts, or teaching whatsoever. So, and well, study to go study in the United States in San Diego, that was a project that would have cost me at that time $40,000 American dollar, which we didn't have. Neither my family, neither me. I worked hard to do it, but I was not able. So instead of finishing my degree as on New Orleans history, I decided to go and to go on trips. So I went to Mexico and I stayed there for 3 months, just traveling from one archaeological site to another, just visiting where the Mayans and the Aztec used to live, and just focusing on as an historical, voyage. So I did that, and by coming back, I said, well, I was with my one of my brother, and I said to him, well, see, instead of going back to school, I want to work. I will work, and I will work like for 6 months, and then after that, I'll go and on trips and do that. So I did that for a couple of years, and after that, I started my band. So I kept on working in construction with my brother, and that was one of the métier that my father taught us. And the second husband of my mother's second husband, he was a contractor and a carpenter, so he taught us the ways of carpentry, and it helped me through my whole, well, almost, well, my whole life. And bring us to 2008. I had a work accident. I fell down from one floor to another. I broke my hip. I had 4 operations in my knee to stabilize my leg to be able to walk again. And during that process that lasts like 4 to 6 years of operation, I went back to school. And I've met with Gérard Baudet, who's a patrimonial expert at the urbanism school at Université de Montréal, and we had a little talk, and he said to me, read that book and call me back if it's interests you. And it was on structural geography, to the understanding of the land and how the land changed, and how the land has an anthropological, cultural meaning in it, that makes it that makes that everybody wants to settle there, not there. And so I read the book, and I really got into me, and I called him back and I said, yeah, I want to do it, but I'm going to do it my way. I want to look at Argenteuil, the territory and the people, the first settlers. Why do they came here? So I presented the project to a history professor at the Montreal University, Christian Dessureau, and both accepted to be my directors, master degree directors. So I got into that for 2 years, and it helped a lot for me to construct, to build this knowledge of Argenteuil history. And in the same time, I was working for the MRC on a special project of an inventory of cemeteries and burying places, family plots everywhere around Argenteuil. So I had to do lots of in local research to understand, okay, those people from Avocat, those people from Pointe aux Chênes, where did they come from? Why did they settle there? And I built this knowledge of the whole of Argenteuil, from south to north, from east to west, around the rivers, around the land, and understand all these people. Why did they came here? So
Mm.
it helped me a lot. See, so
Yeah,
yeah.
sure, sure.
So this is how I became the Robert Simard that you know. See.
Actually, one of the questions that I've been meaning to ask you each time is, where does the naming of our area Argenteuil come from?
I come from France. One of the first seigneurs of Argenteuil was named Charles d'Aillebout de Mussot, and he was from Argenteuil in France. And
Okay.
his son, who was the second seigneur of Argenteuil, his name was Pierre d'Aillebout d'Argenteuil. So
Okay.
the seigneury came from there. But Frontenac, who was Charles de Buade Frontenac, who was the governor of New France back in those days, he was the one who conceded that seigneury to Charles d'Aillebout des Mussot. And des Mussot decided at that time to name it Seigneurie d'Argenteuil.
Oh.
And you know why they conceded that seigneuries was because of the fur trade.
Mm.
Yeah. Charles d'Aillebout des Mussot was making money with the fur, so he had control, the control of the long salt, right? The long sou. It was really important for people in New France.
Sure.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. There's always a money question in behind a lot of these events, aren't there? Yeah.
yeah. It
Yeah.
was, yeah.
In addition to what we know about you, Robert, about your talks and through your talks and your presentations and the work that you do with the museum, and maybe actually before we do that, maybe we talk a little bit about the work that you do with the museum
Mhm.
specifically.
Yeah, I'm more like a consultant for the museum. I'm the house historian, we could say.
Hmm.
And when I first got there, that was in 2010, and I met with Lynn Saint Jacques, the director of the museum. And I was working for Ayers family on a certain. Well, they were into court against Hydro Quebec, and they needed to build their own history to understand why they were on the river and everything. So I was looking for, like a little dust in that big picture history that could, uh, uh, um, prove that that when they built the dam on the river, they had the rights on the river. So it was that. And so I was searching and searching for these little information, and I went to the museum. I said to Lynn, I said, "Hey, hi, I'm Robert. I'm a historian. I work for Ayers family now, and I know that you have archives here." And she said, "Well, we do have archives. Yeah, you're supposed to have many boxes of archives on Ayers family and everything." So how come you know that? Well, it's all here and there. And so I went into the museum and we went up in the attic and we found the archives. Lynn was not really sure what was going. She just arrived in her seat as a director, and so we kind of look at the museum and we decided to do something with the museum both together. She proposed to me to be a consultant, and I said, yeah, I would love that. I would love that. So it brought me back, years before when we got to St. Andrews in 79, when my
Sure.
mother, and I said, finally, I'm going to do something with my community. And I really fell in love with
Hmm.
what was in there because all our history was there
Oh,
to
wow.
pick up, there to know, there to communicate, there to understand. And you see, we started on a small project, and then after that we went to with a bigger exhibit on Argenteuil, Ma vie comme rivière, and after that we went on Orica, and we kept on working and building rebuilding the reputation of the museum as an important institution, cultural institution in Argenteuil and all around. And we wanted to do, with the small budgets that we wanted to be at the uh, fin point of
Hmm.
technology. So, just right there and use the new technology. So, and me, I had visions, you see. I told them, I want to see the old territory of Argenteuil uh, see it developing right in front of our eyes. So we're going to use, like a projection, and it's going to change. We're going to have pictures and everything. And she said, wow, so interesting. It's going to be on a table. People going to be around the table and they're going to look at it. That projection would be animated, and I could tell stories through all this, And this is how we built the Argenteuil Ma Vie comme Rivière. And so we met with those people in Montreal who were specialized in technology, and they built around my vision of what
Oh,
I
wow.
saw. So it's
Yeah.
really incredible. See.
Yeah. All right, so the question I was going to ask you earlier is that in addition to what we know about you through your talks and your presentations, is what other areas or activities are you involved in? You've talked about your band, and
Yeah,
I'm
well,
sure you don't.
I'm a hockey coach.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, I'm more the coach of the coaches. See, what I do now, because well, I have four kids. The four kids played hockey. My older one's still playing in the beer league, and one of my son is now playing with Saint Jerome CJEP, and he got drafted by Oceanic Rimouski Oceanic.
Okay.
And there's another one, 15 years old, is playing in the regional structure with the Select du Nord. And so I've been really engaged into coaching years ago. And um, when they started skating, I encountered it's a teaching program of how to skate. It's called the MAG, Méthode d'apprentissage hockey sur
Mhm.
glace, and it's sponsored by Hockey Quebec. And me, a master trainer. See, I'm there to make sure that the program is well taught and that the coaches have a really good practical with the kids they have in front of them. You see, like when you're coaching a 5-year-old kids, you only have 5 seconds of attention if you want to
That's
show
right.
him a drill. So it's not time to go at the board and make those draws. And no,
Yeah.
I am really into that, initiation of ice hockey. So this is what I do, and I really love it because well, at the fall season I'm almost like 12 to 14 hours a week on the ice with coaches
Oh, wow.
and kids. Yeah,
Yeah.
and it's mostly 4 to 8 years old. Yeah.
Oh, wow.
So I'm there at their first start. So probably I'm going to be the allumeur de réverbère for those little hockey players, you see.
Yeah. Well, yeah, you need to be recognized for the patience, because I've coached 4 to 8 year olds in my past,
Yeah.
and there's a patience required there.
Oh, yeah.
There's a reason
Well,
I don't do it now.
well, I test more my patience with the coaches than with the kids, I would say.
Probably true. Probably true. Probably true. So,
So,
looking into the crystal ball, what lies ahead for Robert Simard?
books probably. Yeah. All these stories, I have to write them. I'm more an oral person. See, I talk a lot, but definitely I will have to write those stories. Definitely. So,
So,
so
so the voice to text technology is going to help you out there.
Otherwise, I would need somebody who writes really fast.
Well,
But you see, and by writing, I mean writing both in French and in English. I feel it's really important to communicate our history in both language. Because the people who settled here were at first English speaking people, and two, if I could ever learn how to speak Amérindien, I would love to write that history in Algonquin or in Iroquois language.
sure. Yeah.
Yeah, because we do not have we don't have to take them out of the picture. They were there before us. And we were lucky
Right.
to have them. They showed us the way to live here.
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah. Well, this has been terrific. Why don't we spend some time now? We can open it up to any questions from our audience.
Okay.
As I indicated at the beginning, I'm not a real big specialist on Zoom, so I'm sure some of you people who are watching who may have questions for Robert can figure out how to get into the conversation here. I don't. Are there any questions at all for Robert?
Oh, there's a
Yeah,
Heather.
go ahead.
Yeah.
Hi again. We want to read more books from you, but I'm interested in the Indigenous peoples. Could you give us just a summary of, there was Mohawk, I think, and their attachment to the land. They didn't actually occupy land, so that's why they sort of didn't do well with government sort of negotiations as what's due to them and what is their property. I presume they followed the river and the fishing and migrating. So can you give us a little summary of the Indigenous peoples?
Yeah.
And we want to read a book on it.
Okay. Great. You know, we found out that the indigenous people occupied our territory up back to 6,000 years ago. So 6,000 years ago, so that means
Wow.
like 5,500 before the European arrives here. And how do we know that? Is because the archaeologists dig certain part of our territory and they find out artifacts that brings us back to the archaic age of human evolution.
Where
We know that these
exactly did they
people, yeah,
find
we
the
know that,
artifacts?
yeah,
Where
these
exactly?
artifacts are stationed at the museum. We have some, you know, that are digging tools, or they could be to use for agricultural needs. But you know, in this whole picture of 6,000 years of occupation, some of them were farmers, some of them were nomads, so that they moved on the territory. Some of them were Iroquois from the Valley de Saint Laurent, so Iroquois from the St. Lawrence Valley. Others were Algonquin from the Whiskerines tribes, Algonquins from the old tribes. But for what I recalled in my reading, in my knowledge of indigenous history, no Mohawks occupied Argenteuil land. The Mohawks who lived at Oka, they are displaced population. They were displaced there by the French people back in 1718, 1719. Okay, when they created the Deux Montagnes Seigneurie, les Sulpiciens, the Sulpiciens, who were a Catholic, they are the one who created that reserve of Oka, and the people who were displaced there, they used to live at Sault-au-Récollet. So Sault-au-Récollet, that's close to the Papineau Bridge. So it's Anstick and then Laval, part of Laval. So those displaced population were, you know, brought to the land of Oka. During that time in Argenteuil, we had the Whiskerines who lived close by the Red River, but a big war against the Iroquois, probably the Onon-Charanon, who were living on the southern part of the Ottawa River. They are the one who went up north and massacred that tribe back in the 17th century. We know that when Champlain arrived on our territory in 1613, there were population living close to Carillon and Grenville because they helped him to cross the Long Sault. The Long Sault was not navigable at all. He had to do portage, so get their canoe out of the river and do portage around the Indian pathway. And we know too that, you know, a couple of years later on in 1660, when Dollard de Zormo had his big battle against the Iroquois who wanted to get control again of the St. Lawrence Valley, that people were living around here, probably farming the land too. From what we know, around 1,000 years ago, there were a village in St. Andrews, right on the golf course of St. Andrews, and the Iroquois were living there, and they were burying their dead. And probably underneath the St. Andrews Protestant Cemetery, in that big curve there from between St. Andrews and Carillon. Underneath that cemetery, there are probably Indian bones there, and we have
So you said
recollection.
farming, is it the three crops? What
Yeah,
did
yeah,
they farm?
they crop probably, you know, the three sister. So
Yeah.
it's a, yeah. So and it's not in the archaic age, but more in the modern age. So we know that people lived there in Argenteuil before the French occupied the land and the seigneurie was created. So yeah. So and it's really interesting, and probably in Lachute and everywhere. You see, if you dig the ground, and you have to go a little bit deep than 1 foot, you have to go underneath 2 to 3 foot, and probably you will find at certain places artifacts, Indians artifacts. That's for sure. Arrows, arrow point, and yeah.
And
It's
some of them
interesting.
are in the museum?
Yeah, some of them are in the museum. Yeah, we have a lot of artifacts, indigenous artifacts in the museum. That come from Argenteuil. See, because there were archaeological diggings back in the 57, then in 67, then the last ones I figure was 1973. Yeah.
Now you
Thank
see,
you.
Heather, if you had been taking notes, you could have had a co-write on Robert's next book.
Sure, anytime. No,
It's
when we really need it.
yeah, it's a story that people need to hear, hey? It's really a story that people
I
need
hope
to
they
hear.
didn't have too many residential schools in Argenteuil.
No, we had none here. So
Thank God for that.
yeah, yeah.
It's interesting, Robert, that you mentioned the Sulpicians with the in relation to Oka, because if I'm not mistaken, there are still ruins up on the hill of the church that they built up on
Yeah,
top of the
yeah.
hill across from the school, I think. Eh?
Yeah, there are
Yeah.
ruins there. Yeah.
Yes.
And we have plans. There are lots of plans that existed of that first installation there of the first reserve when the Sulpician arrived in 1790. And do you know something? The Sulpician, they were really into getting control of Lake of Two Mountain and the Ottawa River. They even claim most of the part of the Long Sault as their seigneurie. And so the seigneur of Argenteuil back in those days was a lady, Marie-Louise Denis. She had to go right in front of the king in person to defend her title of the
Wow.
seigneurie at
Yeah.
Argenteuil. Yeah, and she won. So she won.
Yeah.
She won against the Sulpician. So.
Yeah. So, now, as a youth growing up in the Montagne, one of the required trips we had was up the mountain to
Up the
the
mountain, yeah.
ruins, and
Mhm.
yeah, it was back at the time it wasn't all that interesting, but today as I look back on it, it was something that's good to. It's still in my head that it's there.
Still in your head, yeah. And this is a good thing, you know. We have a lot of talk these days about the implication of the Mohawks history in the St. Lawrence Valley, and it's good that historians are taking part of that discussion and replacing the good part of the missing pieces and that old puzzle of knowledge, you see, because there are misinterpretation of what it was back in those days. So,
Sure. Yeah. I think that whole story of Oka and the idea that they could simply build a bigger golf course on land that the Mohawks claimed. Well, they didn't claim it; they were given it, right?
yeah.
So, anyway, does anyone else have any questions for Robert? Okay, well, I guess that'll be good for this. Robert, this has been a real pleasure for me to have the chance to talk to you twice now, and I hope that we'll be able to do it again. For those of you who are watching, and this conversation this afternoon has been recorded, and you'll be able to find out through Four Corners how you can see it again if you wish to see a replay, and maybe Heather will get to write that book after all. And
À la prochaine.
Yeah.
Thanks. It's been
Okay.
a pleasure.
Thank you very much. All right.
Thank you so much. We always learn something. Wonderful storyteller. Thank you. It needs to be told.
All right.
Thanks.
Thank you for joining us, Heather.
Right.
Bye-bye.
Okay, I think we just leave, I think is how we do this,
Yeah,
right?
that's how we do. Well, thank you very much, Kenneth. It's been
Okay.
a really great pleasure. And
Pleasure,
if you
and
want
I'll-
to ever to do that type of interview with a musician, you feel like a Harry band. Is
You're on my list for the
Okay.
potential of playing with us and possibly an interview specifically about your music.